So today I am making a new Funko Pop figure using this Funko base and some Apoxie Sculpt, as well as various other sculpting tools. I'm really excited for this one, so let's just dive right into it. Now, opening up my Apoxie Sculpt here, this is actually my first 2 jars of Apoxie Sculpt, and as you can see, it has this weird sort of yellowy green film to it. At first I was a little bit weirded out by that, but then I did a little bit of Googling, and apparently this can happen if your Apoxie Sculpt sort of sits there for a while. I guess it's just some of the, ingredients sort of separating a little bit and you have to mix it back in together. So I thought I would just mention that because, who knows, it could happen to you. So I mentioned how this was actually my first 2 tubes or tubs of Apoxie Sculpt. Funny thing is actually, I kind of lost these. I actually lost these for a while, and that's why you saw me in my last Funko video sculpting with the natural color, because I guess I just had to buy a new set of it because I thought this was gone. But then after I bought that set, this one showed up as it usually goes. But hey, at least I have more Apoxie Sculpt now. So the character I am sculpting today, he is called Cornelius, and he is from a video game called Odin Sphere. Now this is for a commission, but I was really excited to do this one because the character just looks so cute, and I absolutely love the colors on him too. I find the purple and yellow color palette kind of thing just really up my alley. But those are actually 2 of my favorite colors. So we're starting off now with the ears. As you can see, he does have some very long rabbit-like ears, and I really want to get the shape correct before I stick it down on the head. One of those ears does stick up more than the other ears, so I kept that in mind when I created this character. And yeah, sticking this sculpting medium, I guess you would say it is, to the bases is actually very, very easy. This stuff can end up being quite sticky, which I do really like because I just find that a little bit easier to get it to adhere to the base compared to Fimo that I used to use. And there's also other benefits too, especially since you don't have to bake this guy, so of course it is quite easier to use. So after I got those ears stuck on there nicely, I rolled out a long piece of this Apoxie Sculpt and I cut it into lots of little tiny pieces because, as you could see from the reference, this little guy has lots of tufts of hair and fur around his ears and on top of his head. So I made a little starry kind of shape with some curly pieces of Apoxie Sculpt that is going to end up as locks of hair. Now, after just a little bit of trimming on the bottom so it would fit nicely, I stuck it in between those 2 ears, and it actually fit really well. I didn't have to reshape it or anything, so that was quite convenient. Now, after I added that piece to the head, I had to make lots of little tufts of fur which was going to go inside the ears. Now this was very, very long and tedious, this part, because I pretty much had to mostly individually stick these little pieces of very, very thin clay to the ears. Now I'm wearing gloves because this stuff does sort of damage your hands, and I really, really didn't like having to wear those gloves while I was handling the teeny tiny pieces. Now the website does say the longer you wait after mixing the 2 pieces together, the safer it is to touch. So I usually like to wait quite a while before I actually, touch it without gloves. And this is only if I really have to, because some of those pieces are just so difficult to get with the gloves. But I got there in the end, and I think those little fuzzy ears do look pretty nice and cute and quite close to the original as well. After this, I had to add a little bit of clay to the face, as you could see, because he kind of has a little rabbit snout. And after this, I went in and I started on the details of the little cloak that he wears. He has this really cute little hood that is a bit of a green color, and that goes over his head, and there's this little bit that goes around his neck as well, and it is split in the middle. Now with that hood over his head, I will have to do that in a few different pieces, as it is quite difficult to get one huge piece of clay that's going to go completely around the head. So I like to do that in a few different pieces. As you can see, I'm just starting off with the edges that are going to go around his head. I'm just trimming it in a way so that it fits nicely around the head and sort of drapes down a little bit at the bottom, because his hood isn't that tight or anything. It sort of hangs down a little bit near his chin, and I'm really trying to make sure that I get those shapes correct so that it looks like the actual character. After this, I'm adding a little bit of clay around his waist, as well as this character does wear a little bit of sort of armor around his chest and on his arms. So I want to add that little details on there to make it look good. The arm parts I had to do in a few different layers, and then after that I had to bulk up the sections on his fingers as well. And now you can see I'm adding more clay to the back of his head now to fill out that area where, you know, his hood is. Now you can see I'm wearing gloves again, and that is because I usually like to wear gloves for the first few hours after I mix the clay, because obviously that is mostly when it's going to react to your skin. Now I do want to mention, obviously once the clay is completely hard and cured, it's completely safe for your hands. I just like to take extra precautions and stuff like that. Now this little guy has a pointy end to his little hood. It kind of like drapes down at the back. So I'm actually filling out a piece of clay, as you can see, with a little bit of tin foil. This is so it's not too heavy and I don't waste too much clay, because if I had that solid, it would probably fall backwards constantly. This clay is quite heavy. Also, that tin foil is quite useful for, you know, making sure that it keeps its shape. Now off camera, I did redo the legs and the feet. As you can see, they're more bunny-like. Now I did that off camera because it was actually very, very difficult. Now while I was sculpting this guy, I actually forgot about a little piece of clay that I had set aside, and it completely cured by itself without me realizing. And yeah, meet this little guy. I ended up drawing a little face on it. I don't know why. There was a little split that looked like a mouth. So say hello to this cute little thing. I just had to include that because look at him. So after all of that sculpting is finally done, I had to go in and sand this guy, because I feel like it's just the best way to get rid of fingerprints and just little imperfections and stuff, and it makes it really nice and smooth. After this, I add a few layers of gesso over the whole thing, which is a really nice primer, and I actually use a Liquitex brand one, which I find is the best. Now just a little bit of sanding on top of that as well, just to get rid of, you know, brush strokes and stuff, not too much. And now it is finally ready to paint. I am so excited about this part. This is where it really comes to life. But it's also where it gets really difficult as well, because those tiny little details in hard to reach areas kind of frustrates me a little bit. And sometimes I'll accidentally get paint somewhere that I didn't intend to get paint, and that happens quite a lot. But I just power through it and eventually it gets done. So we're starting off here with a base layer of purple. Now I did thin this out quite a bit with a little bit of airbrush medium, and that is so that it was nice and smooth and I don't have too many brush strokes on this guy. So of course it's going to look a little bit transparent at first, but I just do a bunch of layers, and that's my way of getting a really nice smooth paint coat on him. And yeah, after this I went into the second largest area of color, and that was his sort of greenish hood area. And I really like the color that I mixed for that. It's a nice sort of bluey green color. And after this I went in and I just covered that hair with a bit more white, because I kind of got purple all over it. And then after this I went in and I added some yellow to it, and I really love the bright yellow against the soft purple. Again, those are my two favorite colors, and once I added that purple and the yellow together, I just got so happy because those colors make me happy. And yeah, once we get those base colors on, he starts to, you know, turn to life a little bit. You can start to see the character coming together, and this part's really exciting for me. So he also has that yellow in the area under his ears where there's all this, you know, fluffy fur, and that was a little bit difficult as well, especially trying to get in the tiny cracks, but I ended up getting it done pretty well. After this, I mixed a little bit of yellow ochre with some white to get this nice sort of beigey color. And at first I dry brushed a little bit over the face, as you can see, because he has a sort of a soft-ish gradient. Well, it's not overly a gradient, it's just not a harsh line where his fur is actually this beigey color on the bottom part of his head as well as on the bottom of his feet. Now, I actually really like the sort of soft transition from the purple to the beige. I think it looks pretty nice and I was quite proud with the results. Now, after this, it was time to add in some fine details. Now, I'm actually using my paint pens for this because it's just really easy for me to get some, you know, tiny thin lines with those pens. And I feel like I just have a bit more control when I use them compared to small paintbrushes. Keep in mind though, it is still quite a bit harder to get into tiny areas compared to paintbrushes that are usually pretty thin, especially the tiny ones. But yeah, I'm just drawing the face as well as some of the orange sort of armor over his legs. And I'm also coloring in the silver parts, which I used my metallic paint pens for that, and they were great for that. And as well as that, I also did his face with his eyes, nose, and mouth. And I really like the way his mouth turned out. I just think it looks really, really cute. And his eyes look really cute as well. Now, he does have some little black markings on his ears, as you can see. The tips of his ears are a blackish color, and it sort of goes into a splotchy pattern before it goes back into the purple. That part was quite fun, and I feel like the paint pens really worked well for that application. So here is the final results for this guy, and I absolutely love him. Now I am going to wait a little bit, and then after that I will give him a nice coat of varnish, and that will protect the paint. But I actually want to wait quite a bit for that, just to make sure that the acrylic paint is 100% cured. It's best to wait for those kinds of things. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. This was super fun to make, and it's a really cute character, and I'm so glad that I got to make him. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you're new here, please smash that subscribe button because I am so excited and I have a whole bunch of new ideas for Funkos as well. Hello, Funko makeovers coming soon, as well as more artsy and crafty stuff. I hope you're all having a good day, stay safe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone.